Hello Fellowship, Jeremy here. It is Saturday. In this vlog I want to talk a little bit about our topic this week, being how do we reconcile the fact that we're trying to teach in a way that's different than the way we were taught, and go through a couple of the supporting questions in order to do that. So the first question that I've been thinking about is, do we believe that students are fundamentally different today than they were in a previous or my own generation? The answer to that, I believe, is a resounding yes. And I think I need to take a larger picture view to really discuss that. And I've got this ethnographic theory about what it really means in education, about the way culture has changed. The basic thought on that is that over the last few generations we have changed the way families are. We've changed the way what they look like and what economically how they work, and we've moved away from dual parent families with multiple children to more and more frequently split families. I mean, we used to call them broken homes. They're not broken, they're split families now. And so that's changed the way that students are raised and changed the culture of families and changed the culture for education. In a similar note, even families that aren't split families, we see more and more we have to have dual incomes to make a go of it, just in the way the economy is and has become. And so fewer and fewer students now have a parent at home or grown up in a parent at home or without a parent at home. And I think that has effects on education too. The first argument that comes up when I bring up this theory to other people is they say, well, yeah, you know what, I came from a single parent family, or quote unquote broken homes, or both of my parents worked. I was a latchkey kid, and you know, I'm even one of those example of that, and I turned out fine. But I think that the difference being is that if we take myself, for example, my parents were both raised with one parent at home, so they had that single parent at home to instill values in a very strong manner. Like there's always someone there to support that. And so they also learn how to parent in that sense. Moving down a generation, my parents had those values instilled in them, and they were able to instill those values in me and still know how to parent by having that example. And I don't think that transfers well into the next generation of latchkey kids. So myself, for an example, it's work, and I know it is for everyone, to be a good, strong parent and instill those values. Because even though we may know what they are, and instilling them in the next generation is difficult, I think, because often when we see our kids, I mean, I know this, for example, I don't get to see my kids nearly as much as I'd like to, especially, I mean, even if my wife and I were separated, it would be even worse, right? So we don't get to spend the time with the kids that we'd like to, and the time that is spent isn't the prime time learning time. That's probably in school. By the time I get to spend real quality time with my kids, it's after school. They've had a long day, they're tired, I'm tired, and we're not at prime time for learning, instilling values, and having quality discussions sometimes. So I think that really is where it skips a generation, and we're often having difficulties instilling those values. And I don't know if work ethic is necessarily one of those, but the way the parenting changes over time that way, I think, and that's has implications for education. So one of the biggest complaints I often hear in staff rooms, in schools, in educational discussions, is that teachers are becoming more and more parents and have less and less time to teach. And so I think that's where we see what's going on, that, yeah, teachers are having to be parents because the demands of society on parents have changed in a way that doesn't allow them, well-intentioned or not, to be the parents that their parents may have been, and especially perhaps their grandparents were for their parents, and therefore now we're 2 generations into latchkey kids, to use that term that has kind of gone out of out of style now, because that's just the reality now. So there's a key difference that I see now that has those implications in education, where students are fundamentally different now than they were a generation or two ago. The next consequence that I think comes up very, very strong, very obvious, very clear for me is that of attachment. When we have students who don't have that quality time, there are so few hours with an adult in their life, a meaningful adult, being the parents primarily, and hopefully is becoming teachers more often, again, as those teachers are becoming more of parents. I think that the attachment students are holding becomes more to each other, and we get those primary attachments where students are looking to each other to set examples, and that lowers the bar often when we're attaching to other students who don't have those values and morals and skills that hopefully they would have learned from a parent. So attachment is another major change that's significant in students today than it was in previous generations. So when we talk about attachment and attachment theory, the expert, at least in my mind, is Gordon Neufeld. For example, this one here, Hold On to Your Kids, a bit of a classic, 2005 or so, but a great overview of how attachment theory works, and the basis of my thoughts on where attachment has gone awry in this generation. When it comes to meaningful attachments, I'm seeing students reaching out to one another, as I just mentioned, and to form those meaningful attachments. And at the same time, what I see occurring as a result is participatory cultures happening. I'm reading Howard Rheingold NetSmart right now, talks about that. It's a real bridge between the digital cultures and what Howard Gardner talks about. As attachment theory. I think that in participatory culture, and I just watched on Edutopia's vlog websites, was it Henry Jenkins does a talk on participatory culture that is good too, bridges the gap there. Participatory culture happens when people are looking around at the higher level playing field rather than looking at hierarchical for meaningful attachment. And I think there's something else that we see fundamentally different. Students who are attached that way are creating cultures of I don't even know what's the best word here, or homogeneity, or just it's a level playing field rather than that hierarchical, and so they're building as a community, and you know, the positives coming out of that are a lot of community learning happening, and oh, my mind's going a mile a minute here. And those cultures influencing one another, and as we have this general external knowledge and capacity being built that way rather than in narrow vertical streams. The second question I've been thinking about is that one about what is it that we think we know now that we didn't know then about learning, and I think there's a few things. Specifically, I think we know a lot more about cognitive science and neuroscience. We know how the brain works. Well, we better know how the brain works, literally, more so than we used to. I think we know a lot more about memory and how that works. We know a lot about learning theories, which ironically have been around for a few generations, but we're starting to pick up steam with them and understand them better. Things like social constructivist learning that I'm passionate about, that takes into account the social aspect of the changes in culture. We know more about things like activity theory, and again, things happening. Learning happening situated in context. The context is important for learning now. All learning is cultural. It is social, and it doesn't necessarily take place individually like we would have used to believe. I think that makes a significant difference, especially moving from a knowledge-based economy of world economy and school economy to one of competencies and construction and product and meaningfulness. So I think there's some significant changes there that are different. And I think we really do know more, and we are at the phase where we now know it, we're understanding it better, and we're at the point of, okay, let's work to implement it better, and I think we're starting to get a decent grasp on that too. So I'm excited about the future of education in that matter, that it really is moving forward in my mind at least. So to take a look at that overarching question of how to reconcile the fact that I'm trying to teach differently than I was taught, I don't think there's any reconciliation necessary. I think that students are fundamentally different than they used to be, than I was as a student, and so that requires different teaching to be a good teacher. I also said I think we know more, and so knowing more, we're putting that into action, and again, that doesn't need to be reconciled. We're moving forward, and no reconciliation really needs to be made here. That's not to be said. That's not to say that I wasn't only taught through very traditional methods. I had some amazing teachers who were very influential in my life. Unlike some of the fellow spokes, it wasn't grade 2, but it was grade 6 and 8 that I had some teachers that really made a difference. Some were very traditional, and some were very forward-thinking for the time. And again, there's no reconciliation necessary. I think that those teachers taught in the best way they knew how, and made a difference in what they did. And I pledge to do the same. Teach the best way I know how, and try to make a difference, and continue to be a learner, so that I can also be a great teacher. So I think that's it for me for this week. Said a couple of controversial things again. Look forward to the discussion in the discussion thread. And so Keith and Charla, I'll pass it over to you for the rest of the day. And Susan and Joe, I'll see you tomorrow.